This is the Fight Hunger Bowl podcast. Doug Kelly, along with the Executive Director Gary Cavalli. Gary, a very exciting week just concluded with the announcement on Monday that beginning in 2014, in addition to being at the new Levi Stadium in Santa Clara, the competing conferences will be the Pac-12 and the Big Ten.
Great week for us, Doug. We are very excited about the future of our game, and it was a long and intense process involving, negotiating with the conferences, but we feel like we ended up in a great place.
Gary, let's talk about the Pac-12 first. It has been the Bowl's anchor conference now for 6 years. Had some great teams, great matchups. This can only get better as you look at the Big Ten teams that not many West Coast fans have seen come into our area.
Well, yeah, it's kind of a two-part question then. I think, when we looked at what kind of a matchup we wanted to have this year, like every bowl, we had to say in the new landscape of college football with playoffs and with all the jumping around there's been in the different conferences, where do you want to be? Where do you see yourself? How do you stay competitive? How do you stay relevant? And so the obvious answer was you get the best potential matchup you can, the best possible matchup you can. And so it was kind of a double target for us. Target number one was trying to improve our position in the Pac-12, and target number two was finding the best possible opponent. So to answer your question about the Pac-12, it's a great conference. It's our home conference. It's our anchor. We're in their geographic footprint right in the middle of the conference. And we regard them as a must-have, for now and forever. And but at number 6, you have a lot of sleepless nights. You don't always know if there's going to be a team that will qualify. You have things like probation. Crazy things happen, and sometimes you don't get a team. And so all of us have less hair and lighter hair than we did when this game started. And so we wanted to see if we could move up in the Pac-12 pecking order from 6 to 5, or perhaps even to 4. And we got very fortunate. We're able to put a deal together that the conference felt very happy about and that we feel very happy about. So we will have the third pick after the playoff group. And so the conference's selection order goes Rose, playoff number 1, Alamo Bowl number 2, Holiday Bowl number 3, and we've moved up now 2 spots to number 4.
Gary, last Monday, the two commissioners, Jim Delaney from the Big Ten, and Larry Scott from the Pac-12 were on a conference call along with you and Bruce Binkowski from the Holiday Bowl. And one of the points that I thought was very important came from Jim Delaney, talking about the fact that his presidents and his athletic directors both love the idea of coming to San Francisco.
I think that's true, Doug. I think we benefited this year from the way that the conferences philosophically approached their conference, their bowl affiliations, going forward. This year they all kind of sat down and they said, what are we looking for in a bowl partner? This is a good time for everybody to kind of reassess in much the same way that we all had to reassess where we wanted to be. Mm-hmm. Well, the conferences reassessed, where do we want to be? And where became a big part of that equation. What are the destinations that we want to go to? How do we get more diversity in our lineup? How do we keep it, quote, fresh, as Jim Delaney kept speaking about a few days ago? So when you look about, popular, attractive destinations, certainly San Francisco is one of the best, if not the best. And if you've had if you've had teams that have been going to bowls in Texas and Florida every year, a lot of them, and California certainly presents a nice alternative or a way to freshen up that lineup. So I think we benefited a lot from the way the conferences approached their bowl lineups this time around.
Gary, in 2011, Illinois played in the Fight Hunger Bowl, even though the Big Ten was not a part of the equation at that time. Some circumstances came into play to have Illinois come play UCLA, and that was the first time that the Big Ten had been exposed to our game. And I think they came away with a very favorable impression. Was that really the beginning of the groundswell to get the Big Ten on a more permanent basis?
I think it was. Mark Rudner, the senior associate commissioner of the Big Ten, was out here for that game, in part because he wanted to see what our bowl was all about and represent the conference, but also maybe because his son plays in the Illinois band. And Mark and I got to talking, and they had a great experience here, even though it wasn't one of our sellout games. It was still a great experience, and the team had a wonderful time in San Francisco, and were exposed to the great hospitality that our bowl puts on, a great host committee that we have. And so when we did the deal and when we announced it the other day, Mark actually said to me, Gary, this is the culmination of 18 months work, that you and I have put into this. So we looked at the Illinois game as an investment, as an introduction, as an opportunity. And it turned out exactly the way that we had hoped. We now have the Big Ten, which was really our first choice.
Gary, at one time, the Big Ten and the Pac-12 had some discussions about playing a series of regular season games between the two conferences. So that did not come to fruition. But in a sense, you now have three bowls on the West Coast, the Rose, the Holiday, and the Fight Hunger, that will now feature these two conferences as components. And that seemingly might be more attractive to the fans for postseason than a regular season series would have.
It very well could. And I think both conferences and both commissioners were disappointed, that they were not able to work out their regular season schedule. I can't speak for them, but that was the sense I got on the call the other day. And I think that disappointment, or that the fact that they were unable to put it together in the regular season, definitely played a part in them trying to work with us in the Holiday Bowl to add more postseason opportunities.
Gary, part of the new world order, as it were, with the bowls and the conferences, is that the conferences throughout the country are going to take a more active role in determining which teams are best for which games. And I know that the Big Ten is anxious to get as many of their different teams into this bowl as possible.
Yes, they are. Their diversity, it was kind of one word, and freshness was a word that we heard a lot. And the idea is we will have a minimum of 5 different teams during the 6-year period. So the goal is to have all new or only one repeat, if at all possible. And the choices will be made each year kind of as a joint choice between the bowl and the conference. The bowl will make a choice. The conference will have the right to approve it. And as we get further into the 6-year period, I think the conference will probably have a little bit bigger role, just to make sure that there are no repeats or very few repeats.
Gary, the television component is always important and growing more so in college football seemingly by the day. I don't think there's a greater TV footprint between two conferences than that of the Big Ten and the Pac-12, in that you are in 15 of the top 30 markets, and I believe 12 of the top 20. That's got to help everybody.
It's got to help everybody. Yeah, I think that was attractive to both commissioners as well. It's one of the reasons why the Big Ten Pac-12 marriage is such a good one. And with the Big Ten going into New York, both in a sense in the regular season with Rutgers, and now in the postseason with the Pinstripe Bowl, they've got a footprint that goes across the entire country. And that was one of the reasons why the Big Ten was so attractive to us. I mean, they're a national brand in so many words. You say the Big Ten, so many ways, excuse me. You say the Big Ten, people think, wow, Big Ten, Michigan, Ohio State, Wisconsin, Nebraska. My God, there's just one big brand after another. And we're going into this brand spanking new world-class stadium, and it's got 60,000 some odd seats. So those are all opportunities. And you have to fill those seats. So one of the ways you fill those seats is by putting a great matchup together. And we think the Big Ten is going to really help us sell a lot of tickets. In addition to having all those national brands, their fans have traveled to the West Coast before. They're used to getting on a plane and coming out to California. And then number 3, the alumni lists. The base of alumni in the Bay Area is really, really big. Jim Delaney estimated it was 40 or 50,000, but some of the research that we've been doing, Amy Gardner here in our office, it looks like it's considerably larger than that. And there may be even 100,000 Big Ten alumni in the Bay Area, and there are supposed to be 300,000 in the state of California. A lot of those folks are going to want to come to this game.
Gary, how important do you think it was for the Pac-12 to maintain having a bowl game in its own backyard?
Well, you'd have to ask Commissioner Scott about that, but I think they like the idea of what Larry and Kevin Weiberg, the Deputy Commission, have both referred to me on numerous occasions as their quote-unquote hometown bowl. So I think they like their hometown bowl. The Pac-12 Enterprises and TV network are located here in San Francisco now, and we're right in the middle of the conference, and so I think that's all good. They also were very complimentary about the experiences that their teams have had here, and our world-class staff, which includes you and Ryan and Amy. So we seem to have made an impression on the conference office. I think they like the game. They like the location of the game. They like the fact that we've had good TV ratings. Commissioner Scott mentioned that as well the other day, and that we've been favored by TV in terms of having really good windows. This year's game, for example, is on Friday night at 6:30 Pacific time in prime time. We've been very fortunate to get that kind of spot almost every year from our friends at ESPN.
Gary, the past two bowl arrangements, I guess you'd say, have each run a 4-year course. This time around, it is a 6-year course. Why the change, and how will that benefit the bowls?
Good question. I think the commissioners just decided that because the new playoff was a 12-year arrangement, that rather than having to do 3 separate 4-year deals, they decided doing 2 6-year cycles was going to be easier for everybody, and also give them an opportunity to have more diversity in their bowls. So I think that was what it was.
Moving to the soon-to-be completed Levi's Stadium. I know that sounds so good. And it's obviously something that the Big Ten was very cognizant of, the ability to play in a state-of-the-art stadium that will probably be the best in the country the day it's opened.
I think it was a huge magnet, for everybody. We talked to the Big Ten, the ACC, the Big 12. We didn't talk to the SEC, no disrespect intended, but we felt that the SEC, because of the number of bowls on the East Coast and the South, was going to be flooded with people throwing ridiculous sums of money at them, and because of the way the new playoff structure works, they have an opportunity to get 3 or 4 teams up in those 6 playoff group bowls. You might have a lower pick than you think you do. So we kind of targeted the other 3, and in our discussions with Bob Bowlesby at the Big 12 and John Swafford at the ACC and Jim Delaney and Mark Rudner, the stadium came up a lot. I mean, they were very impressed with the stadium, and they felt that the coaches, athletic directors, and players would be thrilled to have the opportunity to play in that kind of a facility. And then, of course, soon after that, right in the middle of our negotiations, actually, it was announced that the facility was going to host the Super Bowl. That didn't hurt. So I think all those things were big factors. I mean, if I had to rate them, I would say the stadium and the city of San Francisco, the matchup, and the reputation that our bowl has, those were the 4 elements that made us attracted to those conferences in no particular order, but the stadium was definitely a factor.
Gary, what do you see as the biggest challenges for the bowl going forward? You are moving from a 42,000 seat facility to one that's 68,500, so a good news, bad news deal. There's more seats available, good seats, in a football facility, but you still got to go out and sell them.
Yeah, I think our challenges going forward are going to really be all around marketing, and creating the buzz that we think should be created, and extending our community outreach as wide as we can. So, we have 62,498 seats that we can sell. That some of the seats right on the 50-yard line that the biggest 49er seat holders have, they're already included in their package price. So okay. We don't get a ticket to sell. I think there's 2,000 of those. And then there's also a certain number of owners' suites that we don't have access to. So I believe our number is somewhere right around 62.5. So that's a 22,500 roughly increase from where we've been. And it's a double-edged sword. You've got that opportunity to generate all that revenue and to build a phenomenal 60,000 plus crowd. But if you only sell 25,000 seats, that's a lot of empty seats. So that's why the matchup we felt had to be compelling. We felt we had to have a compelling matchup, and I think we have that now. We have number 4 in the Pac-12. We're probably going to have an 8 or 9 win team in here most of the time, and we're going to have a Big 12, Big 10 team, and we'll be in the top half of the Big 10. So we're going to have a good team on the other side. We also haven't talked about the market. In our market, because of who we compete against, the matchup was crucial. We're going up against the World Series champion baseball team, a Super Bowl NFL team, another Major League Baseball team in the playoffs in the A's, another NFL team in the Raiders, an NBA playoff team in the Warriors, and an NHL playoff team in the Sharks. I don't think there's any bowl anywhere in the country that can claim that they have anywhere near that kind of competition, and that doesn't even include Stanford, Cal, and San Jose State. So we've got our hands full. So I think between a world-class venue and a first-rate matchup, we now can compete in that kind of an environment and compete very well.
Gary, for the football fan who can't get enough live action, do you see down the road some synergy between our game, among the Holiday Bowl and the Rose Bowl, creating some sort of a trip through California for a week and seeing 3 great games?
Well, that's possible. I guess a lot of that will depend on scheduling. One of the WAGs referred to us as Rose Bowl North, and the Holiday Bowl is Rose Bowl South. So, we're certainly going to look at all those kinds of synergies, and as I mentioned, getting out in the community and making sure that we connect with those Big Ten alumni who are here in the area. Jim Delaney has graciously offered to come out next year, probably in the spring or summer, and do a little road show with us, and we're going to jump on that, and we haven't decided on what the format's going to be, whether it's going to be a luncheon or a reception or a dinner, but we're going to have some kind of an event with Jim Delaney and hopefully Larry Scott and maybe Jed York to really promote the new profile of the game.
You go back to the days of the Pac-8, the Pac-10, now the Pac-12.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But of all the Rose Bowl matchups over the years, there still have not been some games that are very palatable to fans to see. Do you have any particular matchups that you, from a fan standpoint, would personally like to see in our game?
Stanford, Ohio State, my all-time favorite game. I was a senior at Stanford, and I was working in the sports information office, and my friend Jim Plunkett was the quarterback, and my very good friend Bob Moore was the tight end, and Randy Vitaja was a buddy of mine, and we went back there and down there and beat Ohio State. I think we were 18 or 20-point underdogs. So, that Rose Bowl team, which played the team of the decade, with Rex Kern, John Brockington, Jack Tatum, Jim Stillwagon. There were people who said that Ohio State team might be the best team of all time, and Stanford went down there and beat him. So that's still, to me, the greatest game I've ever seen, watched, participated in. I was assigned the losing locker room, and everybody. The reason I was assigned the losing locker room was there was no doubt in anybody's mind that Stanford was going to be the losing locker room, and I was going to be a good person to send down there to get the quotes. But instead, I ended up trying to get quotes from a outraged, violent Woody Hayes. I was all of 22 years old, whipped behind the ears, trembling in front of this guy as he was spitting at me. So that's my memory of that Rose Bowl. But I grew up believing, and I still believe, that the greatest matchup in college football is Big Ten, Pac-12, and the Rose Bowl. And to think that we have that same matchup is tremendously exciting to me.
Well, we've been very fortunate already, Gary, to have had iconic programs like UCLA, USC already in our game. And, it'd be nice. We've also had Cal. It'd be nice to spread the net a little bit. But I think one of the biggest things that comes out of a bowl experience is the word of mouth that comes from the people who have experienced it. The UCLA people, the USC people, the Cal people, practically everybody you can name who's been here has come away with a very favorable impression, and that helps down the road.
It does. It's a relationship business that we're in, and even though it's this humongous multi-billion-dollar industry, it's a very close-knit community. And so word of mouth and buzz is really a very important factor. And we've been blessed, I think, to have the greatest host committee of any bowl committee. And our people just do an amazing job. And that's why I think the buzz about this game and reputation has gotten better and better and grown. And that's why I think the Pac-12 had the confidence to move us up in the order. And that's why the Big Ten had the confidence to want to affiliate with us.
Whew. Anything else for the good of the order, as somebody once said?
No, I think we covered. Everything you wanted to cover and I wanted to cover. But just to sum up, we're very excited about this. We think it's with the kind of matchups that we're going to have, the stadium that we're going to have, the host committee and the staff that we have, that really the sky's the limit.
Thank you, Mr. Cavalli, and that is our Fight Hunger podcast for today.